in the snow. Everything's cold and wet.
Yeah, that's a great question. You want to find dead branches, dead standing trees. There's not a whole lot out here, but one trick is for fallen branch that's like off the ground, like this one. See how it's sitting on this honeysuckle here? It stayed nice and dry. It's off the ground where everything's wet and cold. So I'll take it here for example and show y'all what I'm talking about. Alright, you see that? There's one right there. That's a good piece. Looks like there's a few on top of this honeysuckle too. Very small ones, small dead branches hanging on there. Off the ground, nice and dry. Alright. So I've gathered a whole bunch of hanging dead tree branches. I'll show you an example here of what you're trying to look for out there when it's wet out. A good way to test if you have good wood that will combust more easily is when it snaps right away. So it should look something like this, like that, right away, instant snaps. Like that. That's exactly what you're looking for. Whoop. I got a pretty good pile going just from collecting it off of shrubs and trees that are off the ground, you know. That, an instant, doesn't hesitate to snap at all. This branch right there that's on the ground, right? I'll use that for example. This right here, when it snaps like this, where it hesitates to snap, like this, that is bad. This is not what you want to start your fires. Now, once you have a fire already going, you have the temperature just right, you know, your fire's already hot enough, this will be okay to use. But to start one initially is a bad idea. You're going to struggle starting that fire. It's crappy. You don't want to use that. That means that has too much moisture in it still. It's bright as hell. Brighter than my future, that background. There you go. Yeah, like that. That's no bueno. Now you compare it with this, that just snaps beautifully. Now, as far as tinder, the eastern woodlands, you want to use a good tree around here is cedar, whatever you want to call it. Ugh, same thing, you know what I'm talking about. You want to scrape that. This is what the bark looks like. Very nice and fluffy. And then this other stuff I have on the side kind of looks like honeysuckle bark, but I don't think it is. This came from a vine, which I call tinder vine. It's perfect bird nest. But yeah, I got a nice bird's nest. This was all gathered today. And you can use a fire starter of your choice. I prefer to do things the old way because I think it's more fun. A little bit more challenging too. That's a good tip for starting a fire when it's like wet out or when things are not dry. Because everything is buried right now. There's a lot of snow on the ground. Okay, so I want to show you guys the cedar tree. This is, I believe, red eastern cedar, or otherwise known as juniper. Hence the name. It's got like juniper berries on there. It kind of looks like blueberries. Here's one. It's a tall one. Another one over here. The bark is very distinctive. It's a very distinctive looking tree. As you can see here, like this tree bark is perfect for making a tinder nest. And that's what a lot of the natives and modern day primitive technologists would use for making their bark, and also firewood, or fireboard for their primitive fire starter. Makes a good one for your fireboard. I'd say with the hand drill technique and the bow drill technique. If you gather enough of this, which is what I have done, you can get a pretty good dry pile going. Some of it might be a little bit wet, but for the most part it's, I'd say, dry, and it does a pretty good job with that. The West Coast natives, the indigenous people in like the Pacific Northwest, I think it was, or just the West Coast in general, they relied on this tree a lot. Very important tree to them. I don't think I've ever seen a Western red cedar. I don't know what the difference are, but this is the Eastern variant. But they relied on this tree religiously, to the point where they even called it the tree of life. This was their tree of life. Now, did the Eastern woodland Native Americans have that same point of view? I do not know. I'm sure it played a role, but I do know on the West Coast, the tree very important to them, and it was very prominent in their landscape. They would apparently use the bark to make clothing out of it. They would cut a long strip of its bark with a lot of it still intact, and they would make all kinds of things with it for their daily survival needs. They'd make clothing. I think they'd even use it in their boats. And again, of course, this tree plays a major role in their fire making. It was a very important tree. But anyways, yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit of lore and history about the tree. Although I do the bushcraft stuff, I also like to get into the anthropology and archaeology side of things.